Hello, welcome to Homegrown KC, a podcast dedicated to exploring Kansas City's fascinating history and sharing stories from its rich past. I'm your host, Laura. Today I'm speaking with Amy Loch once again from the Wyandotte Museum, and we're here to talk about your current special exhibit, the original Kansas City, Kansas.
Yes, we're so excited to have you here and to share a little bit about this exhibit with everybody. This has been a little bit of a confusing topic for people. People apparently did not know where the original Kansas City, Kansas was. So it's really brought up a lot of great discussion points for us to share with people.
Was that the impetus behind this exhibit? Like, what started this?
So this is actually the 150th anniversary of the founding of the original Kansas City, Kansas area. And it was something that the Convention and Visitor Bureau actually brought up to us. So they're like, hey, did you know this? And well, of course,
no, we did not.
We knew it, but it was also something that, since people don't really understand where the original Kansas City, Kansas was, it wasn't necessarily something we were going to focus on this year. But after they kind of pointed out, hey, it's 150th, they're like, well, I think it's a good time to help people understand how Kansas City, Kansas actually developed from those early years to the Kansas City, Kansas people think of today.
Now, there are a couple of start dates, so which one are we basing this off of?
So this is actually the incorporation date. Okay. So when the town was officially incorporated into a city was October of 1872.
So 2022 was the 150th year. And so this exhibit opened in October, and you're open until February, correct?
February 18th is the final day of this exhibit.
Okay. What do you have planned next?
So next we're actually working on an exhibit on Wyandotte County schools.
Okay.
So we're going to pack a lot into this tiny space.
So was there any other goals besides just, hey, you didn't know that this was where we started?
I think this was really an opportunity to focus on essentially a micro story that people didn't know, and a way to highlight some really interesting objects in our collection. We have a number of ledgers and other documents from that 1870 to 1880 period that there's not a whole lot of reason to bring out and highlight. We also have a lot of early maps, and this was a great opportunity to use them and to answer people's questions. A lot of times people ask about street names that changed over time, floods, and how areas changed. And this really gives a very specific look at a lot of those questions.
Yeah, it does. And actually you said maps, and I started looking around. Except for the one about the floods, every single one of your panels has a map on it.
Yeah, most of the maps in this exhibit are from the Sanborn and fire insurance maps, which are really a phenomenal resource because they go all the way down to the nitty-gritty of exactly what the building shapes look like, the materials they were used for. Clearly, their purpose was for fire insurance, but today they're just an awesome resource for all kinds of people looking for all kinds of information about their house, their neighborhood, how it changed, evolved. And in this particular exhibit, we used 2 main years and compared them so people can see just in, a less than 10-year period how the area changed.
Yeah, a lot. So you mentioned some of the artifacts you have on display, lots of ledgers. But is there a specific item that you find extremely interesting for some reason?
That is always a tough question here. Actually, there is a portrait in here of the last mayor of Kansas City, Kansas that just was donated to us right where we were opening this exhibit.
Oh, okay.
So that one kind of stands out just because they would have never thought to give us the portrait if we wouldn't have done this exhibit. And I think it's going to be a great long-term piece for us.
Okay. Who donated it?
I unfortunately don't remember off the top of my head.
That's okay. And, all right, so I'm going to read off the topics of your panels. You have establishing businesses, armor packing company, the livestock exchange, packing the bottoms, the patch, new arrivals, George Fowler and Son, public education, floods, and
Consolidation.
Thank you, consolidation. So how did you and why did you pick these subtopics?
That's a great question. So this is something we always struggle with, is we really only have enough space in here for between 10 and 15 panels and which ones and which stories to focus on. In this case, we were really driven by the maps that we had available. Which is really the focus of this exhibit. So we spent a lot of time looking at the maps, looking at what we wanted to focus on, and kind of how they could be laid out into a format to essentially tell the story of that area. And really, this is really the bottoms of Kansas City, Kansas today. So really, it's only about the size of Wyandotte County Park that the museum is in. So people don't realize how small the area actually was. So this is really a micro story. And then we also have 5 cases in this room. So that's also part of it, is trying to figure out how those cases tie to panels to be able to tell a story that makes sense. So in this case, we had objects including things from the early police department, the early city hall itself, immigration, schools. So those were all things we wanted to tie into the panels.
Okay. Yeah, you do talk about immigration a lot, where everybody is immigrating from, the living conditions. That's what the patch is all about.
Right.
And working at the meat houses. So I was really excited to see that, because one of the first topics I ever covered was the packing houses in the stockyards. And I will go ahead and admit that I didn't realize that so much of it actually occurred on the Kansas side of the river. And like you said, it's such a small area. One of your panels says that it's only 300 acres.
Right, and our park is actually 302 acres, I just learned. So if I would have realized that, that's a great comparison for people to be able to understand how small the area was and how tightly packed in there people were. And the stockyards were also on the Kansas side. So, I mean, you have the smells from the packing houses, the stockyards, the large quantity of people living in the area, and it's just trying to paint that picture so people can understand it. And we also have some great oral histories in this exhibit of people that grew up in the bottoms, worked in the bottoms. The one man is telling the story of his grandfather who had one of the early packing houses, and it just helps paint a picture that people really have a hard time grasping because it's so far removed from today.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So you had a little notification that you did oral interviews in the late 80s, early 90s. Was that correct?
Yeah, so we've done a number of oral history projects over the years. In this particular exhibit, the ones from the late 80s, early 90s seemed perfect. And our Vista actually put that all together. So he took clips from those different oral histories and put them with pictures so people can kind of follow along and get the story and the experiences.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Do you know how many oral histories you have on tape there? I mean that are playing.
That are playing on this exhibit. I believe there's 4 that are actually playing in this exhibit. We had a few that the quality just wasn't good enough to be able to, unfortunately, share them.
Yeah. So going back just a little bit to stockyards, so the railways were a really big deal for the stockyards, and I mean, it was already a major industry in Kansas City, but that just like exponentially made it grow, right? But you don't really talk about the railroads in here. Is that going back to we have limited space and artifacts that match?
Yeah, to a certain degree, we talk about it in our Wyandotte County Heritage Gallery. And we feel that's something that's going to be told in various other stories. So in this particular exhibit, we tried to focus on things that we haven't really covered in great detail other places.
Okay. And kind of nitpicking here. In your packing the bottoms, you have a line that says the Bowery area. I was just curious. I never heard any place in Kansas City referred to as the Bowery. So is that an area like the patch?
So there was a lot of areas going on in the bottoms that went by different names, had different issues occurring in them. And over time, the area actually evolved. So even the picture that most people think of as the patch, I mean, what people were calling the patch itself moved over time. So there were several streets that were kind of known for the gambling and the barrios and things.
Okay.
And over time, they kind of evolved as, law enforcement caught on and things changed.
Okay, I get you. And I also noticed you don't mention Armourdale until this very last bit here. Why is that?
Armourdale is actually a separate city.
Okay.
So again, this is the original Kansas City, Kansas exhibit. So it's really focused on that very little tiny triangle between Missouri and the river. So a lot of times we get a lot of questions about people that are really asking us about Wyandotte City or Armourdale or Riverview or Armstrong were the others that were consolidated in 1886 to make the Kansas City, Kansas people think about. This is really just the little tiny bottoms area that people don't even necessarily think of as Kansas City, Kansas.
Yeah, that makes sense. It just kind of occurred to me, we're talking about the Armor Packing Co. so much, and they kind of founded Armourdale.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that, the Armor Packing Company and Armourdale didn't really go together in the beginning because just how the area evolved.
I don't actually have any other questions, apparently. We went through that really quickly. So you kind of end in 86, and that's just because that's when the consolidation happened, and so Kansas City, Kansas spread beyond the original?
So 1886 was really a pivotal point. So Kansas City, Kansas went from being the little triangle in the bottoms to being what most people think of as Kansas City, Kansas. So really it incorporated the 5 major cities from Armourdale to Wyandotte City and went all the way over to 18th Street at that point. So it became a much larger incorporated area. And it's kind of funny because at the time, Kansas City, Kansas was really a small city. It was smaller than Wyandotte City. It was not the dominant place in any means. And it became the name that everybody knows and incorporated. And mostly that's because they were thinking they could just kind of, take from Kansas City, Missouri and
piggyback
that reputation and go forward.
Yeah.
But it was really a controversial thing because Wyandotte City was the bigger city. There's still some people that think it should be Wyandotte City to avoid some of the confusion and long names like Kansas City, Kansas.
I get a lot of people that are like, so it's one city? No, it's 2 cities.
Yeah, we get a lot of those kind of questions, just compounded because some of this early history is really complicated in how it changed and evolved. And people often kind of merge it together.
I asked this in the beginning, but remind me again, what's your next exhibit you're working on?
So our next one that we're working on is on Wyandotte County schools.
That was it.
And really the reason behind that is that's what we get the most requests for. People are always asking about schools. We're going to do more exhibits on schools.
Interesting.
Because it's something everybody connects to. As long as they grew up here, they went to a school.
What do you have planned after that? What are you doing for the year?
So we there's still some things that are up in the air. Last year we had a lot of major anniversaries and we really felt like we had to celebrate all of the anniversaries. This year we've got a lot more flexibility. So there's a few things that are kind of possibilities for later in the year. And then we're thinking about a creepy doll exhibit for Halloween.
Okay.
Turns out we have
that will be very popular.
We have more than 200 dolls in our collection, many of which my students have informed me are creepy.
Yeah, I have to agree.
So, might as well play up what will work.
All right, well, like I said, I didn't actually have any other questions written out. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us?
Not specifically, but I do think, if you haven't come out to see the exhibit, I strongly encourage people to do that. Something else that we didn't talk about that's kind of a theme through this exhibit is a lot of the immigrant and cultural groups really started in the bottoms. It was a great place for people to come and get a job and start earning money so they can move on to other places. So a lot of the churches and things also began in the bottoms. So people often don't think about how much of a melting pot it was. And the schools were really, multiple cultures of people speaking multiple languages. And the schools in the bottoms even taught night classes so people could learn English so they could get better jobs. So, it was really just a cluster of many things happening in one space all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a pretty cool exhibit. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Hey, thank you for listening to this episode, and thank you for supporting this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, please let a friend know. Facebook, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, give me a rate and review. 5 stars would be great. But word of mouth really helps. Tell your friends and family to become a patron and listen to these awesome episodes. Also, please support me and like and follow me on all my social media pages. That's Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, Tumblr, and have a YouTube channel. We're working on growing that this year. You can visit my website for additional information. That's homegrownkc.wordpress.com and sign up for my newsletter there. You'll get an email the first of the month that says, here's what we're planning, here's what's going on, stuff to look forward to. In the future, I'm hoping to do some giveaways through that. We'll see what happens. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or episode suggestions, you can email me at homegrownkcpodcast@gmail.com or DM me on any of the social media networks. If you're interested in merchandise, additional merchandise, got some really cool stuff up. Shirts, hats, jackets, cups, magnets, all the things. That's at www.zazzle.com/store/homegrown_KC_store. As always, thanks goes out to my talented sister-in-law, Sarah McCombs, for the creation of my logo, to the Dear Misses for the use of their song Kansas City as the intro and outro music of the show, to local libraries which enabled me to gather all my research, and again, thank you to you, loyal listener. Cheers!
Seem to shake this feeling, and I can't seem to get you off my mind. Thought I lost my